Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of OafDiscussions. I'm your host, Kid Swift. With me, as always, Mr. Brent.
Doing it for the culture today.
Yeah.
Shayna.
Just be honest, all these guys look like a Build-A-Bay.
And Webb.
It looked like he died, and it was like, well, I don't care.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of OafDiscussions. As a matter of fact, this is episode 101, hottest podcast under the sun. Corny jokes aside, apologies for this episode coming in late due to some scheduling conflicts. We weren't able to get a video together. As a matter of fact, we're kind of scattered. I'm providing the solo run. Hopefully, with enough time, we can get the other additions, such as Kid Swift, and hopefully Mr. Brent will be able to chime in on the topics we had today. I was going to try to make this a light episode. So with that said, before we get started, this is kind of a weird rest in peace to give out to, but rest in peace to Joe Jackson, who passed away Wednesday, at the age of 89. Now, a lot of people would sit there and kind of chastise him for him being an abuser. A lot of people technically kind of owe him a thank you due to his contributions to the music world, as far as beating the talent into the Jackson 5, and most specifically Michael Jackson. I've gotten ass whoopings before, so let me back away from this before I get a little more problematic. All right, so how my week was. Currently, I'm watching Cloak and Dagger, which is on Freeform, which is another Marvel show, mostly a teen drama, it seems like. And for the first 3 to 4 episodes, it came across really slow, and I really don't like that, especially this being a weekly show. And it's actually slower than Runaways. I don't know if it's because with Runaways, they have more of an ensemble cast, and with Cloak and Dagger, they're kind of more focused on specifically them two, Tandy and Tyrone. I can't wait till they actually get to understand their powers a little bit more. Hopefully that won't be at the season finale. Fingers crossed on that one. Also watching the second season of Glow, which just came out this weekend. Can't wait to finish that. I'm also caught up on My Hero Academia, third season, excuse me. And now I gotta sit there. It's another issue I have with weekly shows where they're kind of taking their time, but you know, it's a good show, so I'm kind of a little more lenient with that one. And also this weekend, I actually watched The Last Jedi, and I don't get all the hate and vitriol that's towards this movie. I don't understand why this is considered the worst Star Wars film of all time when, I mean, hell, we just had the prequels previously. And the funny thing is, I actually enjoy Last Jedi more than The Force Awakens. And I've probably already mentioned on the podcast my problems with The Force Awakens. It kind of felt more, at best, it felt like a Star Wars greatest hits. And at worst, it felt like a tribute band or a cover band playing a tribute set of all the greatest hits of Star Wars. So that's my problem with Force Awakens. As opposed to The Last Jedi, I really enjoyed a lot of the visuals, and I really enjoyed a lot of the scenes that they had take place. Like, for example, the beginning with the bombs on I think it was called the Dreadnought, the thing that looks like a ship that you would see on the Battleship board game. There was also the fighting scene with Snoke's bodyguards, and the final battle that took place near the end with the mining planet, and also that last scene that Admiral Holdo was in. All right. Also, that happened this week, I got a thumb injury. It never fails when it comes to drinking. What I ended up doing was I was trying to open a bottle of wine, and somehow my finger got caught on the opener as I was pulling the cork out. And next thing I know, I have like what looks like a big ass chunk out of my thumb. And I tried taking a picture of it, but I didn't have a good angle of it, and it's kind of tricky to get that angle on it, and it looked really gross the next morning. I think it's healing up now. I've had to go through 6 band-aids by now. No, probably about 4. And the band-aids kind of suck to put on the thumb, mostly because obviously the thumb has to bend, and the thumb is hands down the most important finger on your hand. You know what? Now that I think about that, actually, the thumb is the most important thing on your hand, and I'm kind of willing to argue that too. As a matter of fact, the thumb, I would put that at number 1 on the hand. The middle finger would probably be number 2 for obvious reasons. It's a very expressive finger. The index finger I'd probably rank at number 3. Ring number I'd rank at number 4, and pinky at number 5. And I think that might be the most important ranking of all time that I've ever had to do on this episode or on this podcast to begin with. As a matter of fact, if y'all disagree, go ahead and leave that in the comment section. That might make for an interesting debate. Let's see, what else did I do this weekend? Oh, I don't know why, but for some reason I went on a Lil B binge, and I don't know what the hell I was thinking doing that. And it's kind of funny because his music is hilarious, like horrible and hilarious all at the same time. And I can't tell, like, clearly he has to be a satire artist. So I don't know why I'm just now listening to him after all these years, especially when he came out with The Pack like 10, 12 years ago. But I don't know why I felt like hurting myself. I guess that kind of works out with the thumb too. Anyway. Alright, topics for this week. I wrote them down. I don't know why I'm having trouble finding them all of a sudden. Performance anxiety, apparently. Okay, so apparently DC, or Detective Comics, or DCEU, whatever, they're actually coming up with their own streaming service, which is actually funny how it's announced a lot quicker than Disney's streaming service. And let me see what they all got lined up for so far. There's no release date as to when it's coming out, but they already have Titans, which is debuting this year. Titans, which is the adaptation for Teen Titans. So that's this year. They got Swamp Thing and Doom Patrol is coming out next year, 2019. They got a 3rd season of Young Justice coming out, as well as a Harley Quinn series. Okay, all that's set for 2019. Okay, they also got other notable movies and TV shows in the lineup include Batman Begins, Dark Knight, Superman films by all of them, like the Christopher Reeve or the Henry Cavill, or all of them. Anyway, Lois and Clark, and the Wonder Woman series. There's even more than just TV shows and films. What makes the DC streaming service stand out from others is that it also offers DC Comics. No details on what comics will be available, but a wide range is to be expected, going all the way back to the introduction of Superman from the 1930s. It will be accessible through phones, tablets, TV screens, iOS and Android devices, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and Android TV. Okay, so I've already signed up for it, so I don't know exactly how they're going to play that out as far as the streaming, as well as streaming the comics. It sounds like they're going to do too. I ain't too crazy about this idea of separating an independent streaming service for one particular genre of film. And hopefully, I'm not a fan of Disney doing the same thing later on down the line. And hopefully this doesn't become a trend, because I ain't got enough money to be stretching my subscriptions like that. Alright, we'll see how that plans out. Okay, another topic I probably should just breeze over, because this seemed like a better topic to have with the entire crew, face to face, rather than just me rambling on my own. And it's regarding Terry Crews speaking to Congress about toxic masculinity, or speaking to the Senate, excuse me. He had a testimony that he had regarding that sexual assault that took place with that, what was that agent's name? He spoke before the Senate Judiciary Committee concerning proposed legislation known as the Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights, which he called critical. Actor and former NFL player condemned toxic masculinity. And okay, I'm just kind of reading off the article from the Hollywood Reporter, and it was kind of an interesting hearing that took place, and especially them asking the same questions that have been asked about Terry Crews. Well, you're a big dude, how come you didn't fight back, or how come you didn't? And he's constantly had to pretty much reiterate that yes, he did in fact fight back. He didn't beat him up, because obviously the optics of that would look problematic, and plus it's a big black guy, gay bashing. So So that's already been done to death, it seems, as far as him explaining himself. And as far as, it's kind of crazy to see the comments where there's a lot of people that are just disgusted at him or just bashing Terry Crews over taking the legal action route. They kind of, a lot of the tweets were sitting there showing him as either outright in the closet, kept calling him sweet and all that, or they were calling him weak as an individual. And it's kind of funny as far as like, it was, oh, well, see, my dignity, I wouldn't have let that happen. It's like, I would beat his ass, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny, too, as it's usually the folks that have nothing to lose who are so quick to push someone to lose everything. And it's easy to say that you value your dignity over your sense of well-being. And as what I mean is, like, as far as, obviously, this, Terry Crews has mentioned that he wouldn't have taken that a few years prior. As a matter of fact, he has checked people several times as far as trying him, and he has mentioned that his wife has been teaching him to kind of to take a more noble approach, and to kind of take into consideration you still have a family to take care of, even if you sit there and beat his ass. Oh, you still got, yeah, it's let me not talk myself into a corner on this. Personally, I commend Terry Crews for coming forth and showing that anyone and everyone can be brave enough to confront those that oppress them. I really want to hear more from the other team, like Kid Swift, Mr. Brent, Shayna, and even the listeners to the podcast on that one. Now, on to more lighter news. Let me get into these 3 albums that I listened to over the weekend. First one being Freddie by Freddie Gibbs. I wasn't expecting to listen to this. I wasn't going to check for it. As a matter of fact, once I found out a new album came out. With that said, I wouldn't have checked for it if it wasn't for that promo video that he did, where he kind of made fun of old commercials where they were showing like greatest hits from the 80s and R&B, and him singing off key and just kind of crooning. It was hilarious. You get a chance, check that out. And also the album cover, that also turned me around to end up watching him or listening to him, excuse me. And I'm a little disappointed as far as the promo video and the album cover, because here I was expecting Freddie to experiment a little bit and just kind of not necessarily sing off key, God forbid, but just to kind of, I don't know, I was maybe not really in the G-Funk kind of way as far as sampling the old school shit, but to kind of just experiment with a sound, whether it be changing how he raps or changing the production. And it just kind of, listening throughout Freddie, a lot of what took place on that album was stuff that I feel like I've already heard from Freddie. And overall, I have to re-listen to it again, but as far as my initial rating from listening to it, I would probably give it a silver and go from there. And thanks to Kid Swift, I finally got around to listening to Keep That Same Energy, or KTSE, by Tiana Taylor. Now, apparently she had stated that she had complained about that album or the way it was presented. And she was talking about wanting to do a remake of the album the following week after it came out. Apparently that didn't work out. She changed her mind at the end, like at the last minute. And so we just have this 8-track version to deal with. Or not deal with, but to listen to. And now we are left wondering, well, what could have been with the remake that she had in mind. Now, out of the 2 songs I enjoyed on there, it was a Rose in Harlem. I don't know if it has, I think it was that sample. I really enjoyed Rose in Harlem. And Kid Swift was not kidding about 3-Way. I was like, damn. I don't know why I bothered to listen to that album when I was at work. And I'm sitting here squirming at my desk a little bit. And it was equivalent to it was kind of similar to receiving a nude during a company meeting. And you're sitting there trying to hurry up and exit out of it on your phone. But yeah, that was a dope project. I really, as I said, already enjoyed Rose in Harlem. And 3-Way was dope as hell. Those are the 2 that stuck to me the most on that album. And speaking of albums, let me end this episode on the talk of Scorpion by Drake. Now, here we are with 25 tracks, a side A and a side B. 12 tracks on one, 13 on the other. And it's kind of funny. It's like Drake decided to go the Nelly route and try to have his own sweat and suit. But I don't feel like he actually hit the mark, if that's what he was going for. Now, obviously, side A was more of a rap side, and side B was, for lack of better words, an R&B side. And let's see, should I go? Nah, I don't feel like going track by track, because a lot of those 25 tracks didn't really stick out to me. I didn't really care for a lot of them, and to be honest, unless somebody was to play them all over again, I kind of would forget what they were. Here are the tracks that stood out to me, and some of the lines that stood out to me. Now, the second track, Non-Stop, on side A, I think I liked it, but I'm starting to feel like it might have just been the beat, and I wasn't too crazy about what he had to say on there, especially when he's in there, yeah, I'm a light skin, but I'm still a dark nigga. That line is fucking hilarious, because all I can think of is the blackface picture. But other than that, that was probably one of the tracks I could say I think I liked. Blue Tint on side B didn't make a whole lot of sense. It felt like that should have been on side A, because it was more rap than R&B. That was kind of weird, and it kind of stuck out like a sore thumb to me. In my feelings, I think I liked it, and I think I liked it because it had like that bounce sound to it. It kind of reminded me of like, kind of reminded me of like the Louisiana bounce, Miami bounce type shit, and kind of like the Big Frida, that was kind of also of a Nice for What. Now, later into side B, I wasn't a fan of the posthumous tracks that had Michael Jackson and Static Major for Don't Matter to Me and After Dark, respectively. It wasn't hitting, to be honest with you. And as far as like also those vocals of Michael Jackson's that came back in, what was it, back in 1982 or 84? I can't remember the source from that news article that I read about it. And with After Dark with Static Major, it definitely felt like a old track, just especially with the production and that chorus with Static Major, like rest in peace to him. I just wasn't crazy about those, to be honest with you. Now, ironically, the one track I can actually say that I enjoyed was the very last track, which was March 14th. And it was funny because I think I enjoyed that most because it came across like he was actually telling a story and showing a little bit of what I'll get into a little bit, or actually in a little bit, that maturity or a level of maturity that I haven't heard from his previous works. Now, with that said, as far as that maturity, his music, to kind of piggyback off of a cousin's quote, his music caters to more of the college age crowd, and the Degrassi crowd that he came up with, they're grown now, they're out of college. And so it kind of feels like he should be in that same stage as well. Like he's what, 30, 31, 32? I can't remember now. Turning 32 if I'm not mistaken, due to, I had to find that out. I had to find his age out because of the damn title of the album, Scorpion, which apparently somebody had a fan theory thinking it was because, hold on, let me read this off because this was stupid as hell. But obviously he's a Scorpio. But the theory that they tried to make, there's no source backing this up. And I quote, Scorpion was chosen as the title by Graham because male scorpions leave their mate after fertilization. These actions are reflective of Drake's recent personal life, and Drake reflects on these topics on the album. There's no source found to where it proved that that's exactly the mind state that Drake had when he was entitling this. And honestly, it just sounds like a troll type of article to add, especially with the comments and the criticism that has been hitting them regarding the "you are hiding a child." Now, he's gotten wealthier and he's gotten older, to get back to my original point. He's gotten wealthier, he's gotten older, but it felt like his music never really showed him actually maturing. And when he does rap about deep subjects, it's usually in a kind of a manipulative fashion, where he brings up a lot of his insecurities with women moving on and finding better, as if he wants them to apologize for their actions or their behavior. And when it comes to deep subjects, he comes across more petty and, like I said, manipulative. Biggest example, Hotline Bling. As far as also on here, Jaded, I have to go back to the list, to the lyrics on that one. Sorry I couldn't bring that up as an example. Now, with the mentions of his child Adonis, it felt kind of sprinkled in throughout the 25 tracks, and it feels like they were tacked on as a way to kind of try to save face. Yeah, here we go with face again, talking about Drake. And the line, I wasn't hiding my kid from the world, I was hiding the world from my kid, in Emotionless, it didn't really feel that genuine. And with March 14th, that also kind of felt tacked on, because it was one verse and the rest was just kind of playing around with the piano and kind of vocalizing and go from there. And even if Drake had already planned to say all of this before Pusha T's Story of Adidon diss, I can't help but to feel like I need to throw an asterisk on those introspective tracks on this album, because it's almost like, well, even if he wasn't there, if Pusha didn't drop that track, would this even be on Scorpion? And yeah, those are the overall thoughts I have with this. Now, as far as a rating, I was going to go with silver, but upon realizing that I truthfully only liked one genuine song, or genuinely liked one song, and have mixed feelings about 3 out of 25 total tracks, truth be told, that's not a great ratio. So I'm gonna have to change my rating from silver to bronze on this. I'm curious as to know what the other crew has. As a matter of fact, I got audio coming in right now from Kid Swift about his thoughts on Scorpion. I will go ahead and shine those in at the end.
You know, the interesting thing I've been trying to figure out with this Drake album is, one, how to define it in the kind of pantheon of the rest of his albums, and also how to get past the initial kind of blah reaction that I believe a lot of people have been having with this project, and probably with More Life and then Views before that. I'd say More Life was a little bit more of a standout in between the kind of like meh sandwich that is Views, More Life, and this album Scorpion. But I remember when he first revealed the album itself, just initially, the name kind of fell on a sense of, okay, but what does it really mean? And that may seem a little bit too hoity-toity and philosophical for some, but I think that kind of fits in line with exactly where Drake's albums are at, and pretty much to his own choice. It's just a matter of how much do his fans, or do people who have supported him or really been into him in the past, if they are along for this ride, so to speak. And that's really the thing. That's where we get started with this album. As I have already said, as far as a review goes, it just kind of came across as meh. I saw a really good post that pretty much said that now we're not really getting Drake albums, so to speak. There's not really a through line concept to his newest projects. It's more so of, now that's what I call Drake insert year. And that's really what it was. It kind of started really as far as like him actually admitting that, so to speak, on More Life, where he called it a playlist more than it was an album. And that's kind of where we are. That's where we are as far as like where the albums are, what to expect from them, how they don't really hold the same cohesion like the older albums did. And that's why these albums, I don't think, are as strong as the older albums were. Now, Drake's always been one that I have enjoyed the production behind him most of the time. 40's sound, I do like the kind of sound, that underwater aquatic sound that kind of was created for Drake and became what people know when they hear that type of filter on the beats. You know, one, it's 40, and two, it's Drake. The interesting thing is, I don't think those are where Drake is the strongest at. Now, some of those work really well for him because he gets in kind of this pocket, so to speak, as far as his cadence and everything goes. And that's where he really does his best. Now, with that being said, on this album, Scorpion, there are a few times more so, I would say, that he does get into that pocket of, okay, he's actually saying something, but how does it really matter to the whole? And that's where the big kind of like, I guess you could say, caveat comes into play. And I would be wrong to completely leave out and be remiss not to say or bring up the recent releases of Kanye's newest series of produced albums, whether that's Ye, Kids See Ghost, KTSE, and Nas's album. These albums have honestly, and I know we've talked about it multiple times on the podcast and in the times of reviewing these past few albums, those albums in particular, have spoiled me as far as time goes. So one of the first things I noticed when going through Drake's album is it's long, especially compared to the 7 tracks of those Kanye produced albums. So it's funny, I've gotten into the state of mind now where if I see anything, especially if it's over 10 tracks, let alone in the 20 range, I immediately am like, oh my God, this is going to be a chore to get through. Now, of course, if an artist is able to deliver something with enough quality throughout where that does not seem like that long and the time passes by quickly, that's a great feat and a hell of an achievement. But sadly, that's not at all what happened here. Like I said, Drake usually always has moments of his production, and you know how I am about production, where that does shine through, and he gets in his pocket and he can really ride a beat. One song in particular that I can think of is 6 p.m. in New York, for instance. It's a very excellent song. It's a long song, but it's a song that has a very good beat that is there to support him, but also gets out of his way. And that's where he shines through the most. Now, like I said before, he has a few songs on this where that happens, but the problem is you can't try to rely on that pocket for an entire album. You have to have variations in pace. You have to keep things interesting by switching things up. And with these playlists, in a way, he can kind of get away with doing pretty much whatever he wants from song to song without having to worry about holding a theme throughout, besides just draking. But that's it. Then you have a problem where it just becomes mundane, especially when the album is as long as this one is. Now, like I've said, Drake is a good MC. He has been since he first came out, but at the same time, he is in a place now where he is putting out these, what he calls more so playlists, and you're not really getting to see the writing kind of not only tie together a song, but tie together a entire project, one where the themes can connect from song to song, from beat to beat, to track, and have an overarching theme that really feels genuine and not forced. Now, maybe that's where he's at. Maybe he's at a place where he doesn't feel like he can pull that off without it feeling forced, so he's just gonna basically, anything that pops into his head, any subject matter experiences he's just gonna put it into a song and not into an album, as far as like the whole entire thing. It's like somebody who has a lot of stuff to say, they just want to get it all out, to get it all off their chest, so they're just kind of like going through bullet points. And that's what his albums kind of feel like now. They feel like more bullet points than a whole like paper or a full essay, so to speak. Now, with all that being said, a lot of people online, of course, have been going through the whole thing of, did Pusha T kill Drake and all this stuff, and is Drake's career on the downward turn? I don't believe so. I think he has a lot more left, and he is of course, a hit machine. And if you look at any of his streaming numbers, people definitely aren't sick of him yet. But I just wish for a time when you could see an album in full, a cohesive project where he really gets to put the time in and make it sound like one entire essay, and get away from the bullet points and get away from just like a bunch of songs. That's what I'm hoping we see going forward. And of course, we've had like one really just generally mediocre album, and then two of these kind of like even still mediocre albums, but that feel more like playlist. But hopefully that will change. If it doesn't, I'm fine. There's a couple songs I can always find that I'll listen to and like, and that'll be about it. But of course, a couple songs out of like 20 or 10, 15, etc. is not nearly good enough to get a really positive rating. So lastly, a rating. As we always do with these albums and projects, I would say I'd have to give it bronze, but a low bronze, a dingy bronze, a bronze that's been through some things, a bronze that has been neglected and forgotten what bronze can be used for, what it can make, what things can be crafted from it. A bronze that has stood the test of time, but nobody's really expecting it to go anywhere. But in turn, nobody's expecting it to do anything different. It's just bronze. And that's what this album is. It's just meh. Extremely forgettable. But I'm hoping we'll get something better going forward. But that's all I have to say about that. Yeah. Don't drink and drive.
All right. So that's what Kid Swift had to say about Scorpion. Ladies and gentlemen, if you agree or disagree with what we had to say about Scorpion, I already know one person that's going to feel free to chime in, but I would like the rest of you all to do the same in the comments section or leave a review on any podcast platforms that we have. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram using @OafDiscussions, OafDiscussions.com for a full archive of all of our episodes, as well as finding ways to reach out to us individually. I am Thorobred Webb, Webb859 on Twitter, Webb.859 on Instagram. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been OAF Discussions. Please listen to us on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play now, Stitcher, audio episodes on YouTube as well. And so that's all we have today. Thank you very much for listening, and you enjoy the rest of your day.
Appreciate it. Peace.
There we are. OAF Discussions pioneers.
Quickly.
Confirmed.
Make the meme and then put the @ big thing on there with the stupid little graphic like every other goddamn internet comedian does. We got to get these views, baby.